Unsolved.
The JonBenet Ramsey case. The Michael Helgoth connection. And here's a close-up of the crime scene, which you can see clearly in this picture, a Dr. Pepper can and several cans next to it. But you can also see a stun gun, and then at the top right, there's another stun gun there. And in this crime scene photo, you can see a pair of boots in the bottom right-hand corner. And those are high-tech boots, size 8.5, I believe. And then right here, this is where the junkyard was located, and there was a house on the property. And so there's Michael's address. And then as we head farther east, we come to a mobile home park, a trailer park, and this is where the two new gentlemen that I'm introducing you to. John Kennedy lived in one of these trailers, mobile homes, and Steve lived in another trailer there. Remember the ransom note? The two gentlemen watching over your daughter do not particularly like you. So Michael was significantly younger than these characters that I'm going to introduce you to. After he finished high school, he served in the military for a little more than a year, and he died a little more than a month after JonBenet Ramsey was murdered. So here's a summary of Michael's autopsy, and you can see that he died from a single gunshot wound to the chest. And looking at the bottom, you can see that he was on drugs. So before I go back to those two gentlemen, I want to introduce you to this woman here, Bernice Johnson, and her story, and one more gentleman. So this woman owned a horse ranch or property in Golden, Colorado, which is to the southwest of Boulder, more to the west. And she knew a gentleman named Todd Kevin Fuse, and they had a daughter, Cinnamon. And Cinnamon was in beauty pageants. And Cinnamon was around JonBenet's age. And she was in a few child beauty contests. And it's possible that JonBenet and Cinnamon were in one of the same beauty contests that was held in Denver, or the Denver area. And Bernice Johnson says she knows who killed JonBenet Ramsey. It was Todd Kevin Fuse. He killed JonBenet in an attempted kidnapping that went wrong with somebody from the salvage yard, the auto junkyard. Now this gentleman, John Kennedy, says he believes he knows who killed JonBenet Ramsey in an attempted kidnapping that went wrong, and that was Michael Helgoth and some other person, and he doesn't know who the other person is. Could it be Steve? He went by his middle name, who lived in the trailer park along with John Kennedy, who both knew Michael Helgoth from the auto salvage yard, because they went there, they were into cars, and they went there to get parts. and spoke with Michael often. Now, for the record, Steve is appalled that somebody would accuse him of the murder of JonBenet Ramsey. Now, he does have a criminal record for sexual assault on a child, and he served 3 years in the late 1980s in a Colorado prison. And he was released from jail just a few months before JonBenet's murder, where he was serving 90 days for some other criminal offense. And right there is a can of Dr. Pepper. Here's a crime scene photo. So here's the theory of what happened. Todd Fuse conceived of the plot to kidnap JB. He saw her at the child beauty pageant in Denver, and Todd learned that her father was wealthy. Todd told Michael Helgoth about this idea of kidnapping someone because Michael was always talking about guns and the military. Michael was excited about the plan and told Todd about foreign factions and military tactics and countermeasures. At some point, John Kennedy and Steve entered the picture. Michael suggested they carry it out on Christmas night because few cops would be out that night. To Michael, the whole kidnapping plan was just talk. Christmas night, Todd and Steve entered the Ramsey house from the basement window after the Ramseys went to the Whites. They went upstairs, scoped out the place, and Todd wrote the ransom note. Then he left. Steve hid in the guest bedroom above the garage. The Ramsey family returned home and went to bed. Steve grabbed JB with the white blanket and took her to the basement. Steve decided to assault JB. She screamed, heard by the neighbor across the street. Steve strangled JB with the cord. Then he fractured her skull with some metal object. Steve wrapped her in a blanket and put her dead body in the wine cellar so she would not be easily seen. Then he left out the window. Steve told Todd what had happened and that the kidnapping had failed. The murder of JB had become massive news. Steve was worried. Either Steve killed Michael because he felt Michael would squeal, or Michael killed himself because he felt great remorse for his part in the plan. Then Steve moved back to Columbus, Indiana, where he had lived before. Well, this ends this episode of Unsolved, and this is just a theory that Steve, the former Boy Scout, was involved in the murder of JonBenet Ramsey, along with one of these other gentlemen. And one thing that I forgot to mention is Michael was the one that loaned the stun gun and maybe other items for the crime. And that's all, folks, for this episode.